I think of resistance as exactly what needs to happen. If you're seeing it right in front of you, it's not a problem to be solved. It's a signpost towards an issue. The reason people are resistant is there's work to do. And you wouldn't blame a client because they have work to do. If people are showing that kind of resistance, it's because it's hard. That's why they're coming to see you. So rejoice in the resistance in the sense of you have a guide towards something that's hard to turn towards. And get a little less mindy, get a little more experiential.
How do we work with a client who's resistant? Resistance is a very common problem in the therapeutic relationship, and it's one of the main issues that can end treatment prematurely. So how do we get to the root of our client's resistance? How can we help them embrace change, even though it's painful? I asked Bessel, Kolk, Sue Johnson, Zindel Siegel, and Dick Schwartz what they thought about this issue, and I'd like to share it with you now. I'm hoping you'll be able to use at least one of these ideas in your work today. So to begin, I spoke with Sue Johnson, the creator of emotionally focused therapy. We talked about the core issue of resistance and how resistance can also refer to our own frustration when a client isn't following our plan.
What do you do when somebody isn't where you want them to be? You back the hell up and go join them where they are. That's what you do. But you have to back up and you have to join the resistance. The person is saying, I can't take one step forward here. This is too much. And I always assume it's about threat. It's about being afraid. So I go in as a good surrogate attachment figure and calm the person down. I reflect, I talk about it, and I say, and I slice the risk thinner. If I'm going to work with it, I say, could you turn and tell her, please? I can talk to Sue about these things, but it's just too hard for me right now to turn and share them with you. It's too hard. And of course, when he does that, he's turning and sharing himself with her, but on a level that's comfortable for him. You know, resistance, we always look for the threat in the resistance and we soothe it, and then we try to modify it by making the risk as small as possible, which is what, if you think about it, never mind therapy, it's what good mothers do with children.
Sue worked through the impasse by helping her client take smaller steps toward a larger goal, a sort of titration approach to treatment. Now, I know you know this, but clients can have many reasons for expressing resistance, and often our reaction to this can either be part of the solution or part of the problem. Dr. Zindel Siegel is one of the founders of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and Zindel says that resistance may require us to turn the mirror toward ourselves.
So the first starting point, I think, is when there's a kind of game plan, and the game plan gets waylaid. What is the reaction that gets triggered in you as the therapist who may have an investment or a commitment to that game plan being executed? It could be a way of triggering a reaction in you that says, this is a patient who's defying me, who is challenging me in some way, and I'm the expert, and you can get angry, you can get demoralized. I've heard this patient has had multiple therapists and they're not really interested in engaging. All of these things are normal and natural ways of responding to resistance, and I think that there is a demand on therapists to increase their awareness in those moments, both in terms of thoughts and feelings, but also sensations in the body that might be clues that there is a reaction that is entering the mind.
I think that's an important question. There can be times when the resistance we feel from a client could be a reflection of our own rigidity. I next sat down with Joan Borisenko, a best-selling author and leader in the field of mind-body science. She gave me a helpful perspective about the neuroscience behind resistance.
We're all resistant to change in some ways because old patterns that we have were once adaptive when we were younger. And therefore, because they were adaptive, they helped us to survive through something. They're deeply ingrained at a neurobiological level. And this is good. Having a pattern deeply ingrained means we don't have to learn the same thing over and over. We know what to do in a situation, and it's not resistance that we're dealing with. It's not an unconscious desire for something else. It's just the fact that there's a brain circuit that's running in there. And we need to identify that and discuss it with the client and to say, here is your old pattern. These are the ways that you have told me that it gets in the way. We need to install new wiring. And here is how we're going to go about it.
That's a useful way to look at the problem. We can break down those old patterns and help create new patterns of change using neuroplasticity. Richard Schwartz picked up on this idea of adaptation, and he offered his own approach to overcoming a client's resistance. Richard, as you know, is the founder of Internal Family Systems.
So we have a lot of respect for resistance and for the parts that have spent their lives keeping the client safe. And partly we get much less resistance. And in fact, people are amazed at how quickly I can go to these places with clients. It's because we have this respectful approach. And we honor the protectors for their service, almost like you would a military person, and learn about their secret histories of how they got forced to be so resistant, and offer this hope. And very few parts can resist if they really believe that I can pull it off, because they don't want to resist. They just don't think it's possible. They don't think that they don't think the healing is possible, basically. And it's just safer to keep people out.
I thought Richard's insight was interesting. By honoring the role of those protective parts, it gives them permission to pull back and allow the real therapeutic work to begin. Now, what happens when trauma is involved? How does that affect resistance? According to Dr. Bessel who's a pioneer in trauma research, the protective parts are on constant alert, and you can often see this kind of resistance in the way that a person breathes.
A lot of people are very afraid to breathe deeply. And so you need to really seduce them into slowly take a deep breath and say, let's see what happens if you blow a bubble. Let's see what happens if you make an om sound. Ooh, I hated it. Good. So that didn't work. So how about what happens if you breathe and you make a movement like this, like in Qigong? Yeah, that's okay. So let's do that a little bit more. And then you discover, when you research and you see the background of that the reason that people don't want to take deep breath is because they keep themselves uptight, because the moment they start feeling something, they get overwhelmed. Okay? So there's always a reason why people resist.
As Bessel confirmed, resistance can be tied to a much deeper desire to avoid pain and the possibility of being re-traumatized. But for many others, resistance can be born from a fear of change or judgment. Or some clients simply need to know that they've been heard. Resistance has a purpose. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. And a client's resistance can actually be a positive thing. Some say that resistance is proof that therapy is taking place. Here's Peter Levine, another trauma expert and founder of Somatic Experiencing.
I look at resistance as a welcome. Because if they're resisting, that means they've got skin in the game. They're coming out of a passive role. They're doing something to engage the therapist.
In just the last few minutes, we heard several takes on how to help clients work with resistance. I'd like to hear from you. How do you work with resistance? And how will you use these ideas in your practice? Please let us know what you think in the comments section right below. I'll be back soon, and thanks for watching.